some serious contention going on, but also I think it also highlights in many cases, Nagura, they've been practicing a lot for these later rounds. They kind of metagamed and they kind of worked out the strategy that, hey, we're probably going to drop down to the lower bracket. Let's see how much of a run that we can put together there too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive that those kind of teams, especially since they're dropped into the lower bracket so early. And if you drop into the lower bracket, not only do you have to play more matches, but you also just have less time to prepare for those later matches, right? Because you have to play so many more series. While teams in the upper bracket, Wunderbar and Golden Guardians, they had to play 3 games so far, and now they can just prepare for the grand final, at least for Wunderbar, right? Golden Guardians still have to play 1 more series. So just really impressed to see just how refined their strategies are and how risky they are as well. Having such a fast strat in those kind of dungeons when you have to practice so many different kinds of series is just really incredible.
It really is, and now that means the Fleet from Beyond moves on into the lower finals to square off against Golden Guardians, and this is a matchup we haven't seen for I think we've all been really looking forward to as well, Dranos.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a good one. I cannot wait to see what these two teams are able to put up against each other. This is not going to be one to miss.
Yep, and really we're going to be looking at this point, I think that last dungeon series also highlighted a lot of dungeons that usually get banned as well, so showing a lot of depth from Deplete from Beyond, and we'll see what they're going to have in store as we take a quick break before we get into it. Don't go anywhere, the lower finals will be right up after the break.
As for my fellow casters, you guys have been crushing it and doing an amazing job, especially given the circumstances and needing to work remote. I wish I could be on the virtual desk with all of you, except for Tettles. But there is one issue that has been Twilight devastating me the entire show. Just like Starfall damage, the pun to dungeon ratio has been non-existent, and that's just the ineffable truth right now. Well, I do have something that could help this situation out. So whenever you guys need it, the Book of Puns is ready for you guys. I'll see everyone in Shadowlands.
Aww, we miss Sloot. Thank you so much for granting us the gift of the Book of Puns. We love to see it, and welcome back, everybody, to the Mythic Dungeon International for our lower finals as we prepare for Deplete from Beyond and Golden Guardians squaring off. Hello, everyone. I'm Jack, and joined by Dratnos, Tettles, and Zyronic. And my friends, my work colleague Tettles, how are we feeling about this lower finals? Deplete from Beyond making a crazy run right now.
Man, just as I thought we got rid of Sloot, he came back with a vengeance and brought bad puns. But fortunately enough, we don't have to deal with them today. as in this Golden Guardians and Deplete from Beyond lower finals match, both of those teams in the last series that they've played, they looked hot.
They did, and wait. I'm just kind of waiting for Sloot to open the door behind you and just be like the guest appearance and just. You gotta watch out for more than just the cat.
He's not here, man.
He's scared, Tettles. He's scared. It's gonna happen. He's on his way.
He's not here, man.
Let's get a great look at some of the dungeons that we're gonna be looking at as well, because at this point, that last series featured a lot of dungeons that we were assuming that would pretty much get banned all the time, Dratnos, but Deplete from Beyond was just showing off how strong that they can be in them.
Yeah, Deplete from Beyond looked insane in some very difficult dungeons. This map pool, a little bit different, though, has a slightly different set of maps in it, so we'll see how they do in this one. Of course, they haven't had the time to prepare for this like the Golden Guardians have, because they were just busy with the last match while Golden Guardians was looking ahead to this one. So a little bit more of a precarious position for Deplete from Beyond.
Yep, and Underrot, Shrine of the Storm, receiving some bans. What are we making of this one right now, Zyro?
Very interesting set of affixes here. We know how strong Golden Guardians can be on a Teldazar. The Freehold was always a question mark for me, though, because Golden Guardians, they ran that slower strategy of killing the 4 Awakened mobs on top of Harlan Sweet. We know that's about 45 seconds to a minute slower than a perfectly executed kite strat, so I'm not quite sure if that's going to be a super strong map for them. Maybe they've got something better that they're just holding up their sleeve for that?
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I wonder if part of it was just metagaming each other to say, all right, I want you to ban Toldagor, or that other team should be banning Toldagor. We're not going to be burning our ban on it, Dratnos.
Yeah, Toldagor is definitely an interesting one. Freehold, I think, is going to be a really, really exciting place to see these teams do battle, because their times from earlier this weekend are 3 seconds apart in that dungeon. And as if we haven't quite had enough of our fill of couple second differences here, they are shaping up again for that. They both got a 1-death run. For Golden Guardians, it was 13 minutes. For Deplete from Beyond, it was faster. It was 12 minutes, 57 seconds. So that is very close in terms of potential there. But there's room for either team to be faster just by cleaning up their run than the other team was.
True. And I think in a lot of cases, Deplete from Beyond just continues to get better the more and more that they're playing for just a sustained session. It kind of reminds me, Zyro, of some of the runs that you had back in Legion, where it's just you get into that groove and you keep on pounding.
Yeah, you kind of get into that zone when you just keep playing matches. I mean, you kind of have to have a good base in all these dungeons already, which is where all of our teams are going to be anyways. They've been playing in the MDI for, all of our cups for the entire season, the entire 2 years that BFA has been in the MDI. So I think that the practice thing isn't going to be that big of a deal for them. Maybe Golden Guardians will be a little bit more polished on the maps that we have in this series. But I don't know. I'm just really perplexed at how Deplete from Beyond is playing. They don't seem limited at all.
That was a golden pun.
All right. No.
Someone described it as
it's
wunderbar.
Always the two below
Someone
me.
described it as wunderbar.
It's always the 2 below me. Dranos, I'm glad I can count on you.
Yeah, now that I'm up here in this top camera position, I feel all this responsibility and, not a kid anymore. like
adulthood
down there.
That's right. Interesting how Tettles is always around the bottom.
Very
and always
interesting,
crying.
yeah.
All right, well, we have Fortified Bolstering and Grievous coming in for this first map, and that also means that we're not going to have Trothak be as deadly as it usually is, Zyro.
Yeah, it never really is that dangerous, but I mean, the thing is, the only thing that makes this boss dangerous typically is pulling the trash on top of it. Unfortunately, most of the trash mechanics in Freehold are generally pretty easy to deal with. The only major mechanic you really have to look out for are those chain hooks that can pull people back into the packs. And then, of course, the Frost Blast can do a lot of frontal damage if they're not interrupted. So it's really just kind of free AoE, and as long as you have a hunter kiting that shark around, you're not going to have too many issues.
That's right, and looks like our teams are ready to go. So this is the lower finals between Golden Guardians and Deplete from Beyond. The winner of this series gets to go up against Wunderbar in our grand finals for their shot at $150,000 for first place. Let's take it away. Game number 1 gets going.
Well. I haven't actually had the opportunity to cast with Zyronic yet, but now we get the lower finals. Golden Guardians and Deplete from Beyond starting off with a fairly similar strategy. Everybody popping a Lightfoot, using those fears and running all the way through before grouping the mobs up on the corner there.
Yeah, and it's finally interesting. I think every single other Freehold that we've seen before has started with teams doing completely different strats, with one team going for that triple pull at the beginning of the dungeon, but both teams, like you said, just opting to go for the same strategy, going through, leaving this trash down on top of the boss, and they're also going for similar pull sizes here. They're not going for that massive line of sight pull. They're just going for the same 4 mobs that just see. They look like they're doing a pretty good job of it already. I believe in their earlier pulls they did 18% trash, and then they actually pulled more trash on top of the boss at the end. It looks like they're still doing the more trash on top of the boss at the end here as they pull stuff in with the Hunter misdirects. But yeah, just going for a smaller trash pull at the beginning seems like it's working out for them here.
Yeah, leaving that Bonesaw trapped off to the side for a little bit, waiting for it, waiting for the mobs and Sky Captain Crag just to get a little bit lower before and eventually pulling it in. Sky Captain Crag is starting to die quicker for Golden Guardians than Deplete from Beyond, purely focusing down Sky Captain Crag, and that is the power of that rapid reload, getting those aspect of the wild, that cooldown up more readily available, increases your potency of single target priority damage focus. Golden Guardians is able to down Sky Captain Crag 10 seconds ahead of Deplete from Beyond, and is ahead in trash count currently. I
mean, yeah, being able to DPS the boss down faster while dealing with trash is impressive in its own right. And of course, the thing about this dungeon is you just get to move ahead further in the dungeon that way. I mean, they're already across the bridge while Deplete from Beyond is just barely getting across it now. So I believe the strategy we're going to see here, similar to other strategies we've seen, is teams will head down, skip all the way down to the Council of Captains, and probably have one hunter go ahead and start the RP for Trothak, spawning that pig. I'm not quite sure if they're going to catch the pig right now to spawn Ludwig, but they'll probably do that later on, right?
Igloo goes down.
Oh, no.
So Deplete from Beyond does this. I actually really like this pull that is after the bridge here. Igloo I think he may have gotten melee. Ritari ends up going down. This is so dangerous for Deplete from Beyond here.
I think the wizard powers for Dr. J are going away here. I mean, natural dodging a certain death before, and then having your healer go down twice in a pull and your tank go down. Yeah, this is going to be a full team wipe from them, unfortunately. Yep. It doesn't look like they even got any feint death resets off, just a full 5 deaths, unfortunately, for Deplete from Beyond, and they're going to have to gear back up to do that pull again. It looks like the Hunter cooldowns aren't really that major of an issue here. One aspect of all those pops, they can maybe go for that pull again, but in the meantime, Golden Guardians has already chewed through almost a third of the HP on Council of Captains here, and we know how quickly this boss can go down if you get good brew RNG.
I love that pull from Deplete from Beyond, how they end up pulling all these Padfoots, the Oarsmen, all the stuff on the post bridge, but unfortunately enough for them, that is the danger of those Padfoots, those little Vulpera rats. Whenever they plague step you, they put a pretty hefty dot on you. It is dispellable by Igloo. I actually have no idea how he died, but unfortunately that was a wipe from Deplete from Beyond. Golden Guardians now are pulling some mobs into Jolly and Raoul, utilizing those brews to be able to deal with them very swiftly. Everything's going to go down all at once. Great bolstering management from the side of Golden Guardians.
And it looks like the second time around for Deplete from Beyond, this trash pack is going a little bit more clean the way you want to see. Of course, you got to keep an eye out for those duelist dashes if they actually get off. Not only does it stun everything in between them and their target, but it also just brings them out of the pack, which means it's a pain to kind of deal with bolstering at that point. So you see the shockwave coming out on those casts from Rentari to make sure that they stay in the group. Great execution there from Deplete from Beyond, but it's going to be an uphill battle for them with those 6 deaths on the board now. And yeah, they're just a full boss behind now.
Yes, well, that they are hoping a lot that Golden Guardians will make a critical error. Golden Guardians are grabbing lightning; they have dealt with that fairly quickly, and now are making their way to do looks like a double pull right here. So there are harpooners in this pack natively, so dealing with those first and foremost is probably your top priority. There are some mobs that have a little bit higher HP in the pack. The Scrappers, I think, have 10 or 15% more health than the rest of the mobs. But this should be a very easy pull for Golden Guardians to be able to pull off.
Yeah, we talked about it briefly beforehand, but most of the trash mechanics in this dungeon are easily dealable with if you have people that are paying attention to every mechanic and you have stuff sort of situated out. Like we mentioned, the Frost Blasts, as long as those are interrupted, everything else doesn't really matter from that particular mob. And the chain hooks are usually just kind of dodged by not really worrying about them letting the tank eat the initial ones, and then the second ones can just be disengaged from one of the hunters. So usually there's not that much of an issue with that. So Golden Guardian's now going for this similar pull that we see every single time. The two Crushers pulled on top of Ludwig von Tortollen here. Of course, those Crushers don't bolster anything that they die next to because of Z-axis issues, so they don't really have to worry about killing them before Ludwig here.
Is that why they don't bolster other mobs?
Let's go with that.
Okay. Anyways, but yes, as Zyro said, once they are killed, they do not any longer bolster mobs. That makes them incredibly efficient in this setting where we have in Freehold currently. So the Triple Crusher plus Ludwig von Tortollen, that coupled with the fact that the only DPS that's going to come via melee is JB and Lighty, the Triple Hunter really wants the 3 Crusher plus Ludwig pull. It makes it incredibly efficient over what you would normally see inside of a Freehold.
Yeah, being able to activate that rapid reload on, a one large target in this form of Ludwig von Tortollen here is just like a huge single target increase. They could pretty much have their aspect of the wild up the entire time, which is incredibly efficient for single target damage. So even though they're AoEing, they're doing more single target damage as a result of it. Going in for another large pull here, and the same thing. As long as they get those Frost Blast casts and they make sure none of those rampages get off, they should be totally fine here. Just making sure you get a stun on those blind rages as well so that the mobs stay in the group. They're doing a good job of it. Shockwave coming out from Lighty here to make sure everything stays stacked up, and just going to be AoEing it down with that massive Hunter AoE. Even Lighty himself going in with probably a Miraculous Fang here doing a lot of damage.
That's the major advantage, too, of Cutwater RP, is that you get significantly less brine scales, which have about half the HP of normal mobs inside of this dungeon. So whenever the teams do drink their brews, they get way fewer casters, which, in result, adds fewer bolstering stacks. On the side of Golden Guardians, it looks like Shakib did about half the damage of the rest of the other hunters. He must have been focusing down something there.
Looks like we had another death on the side of Deploy from Beyond. Curry going down in this pack must have been an errant Frostblast or something here, maybe a Fixate. But that's really unconventional. Goes down again! He got chain hooked in! The harpoon in! It was a bolstered harpoon! Oh no, that's the worst feeling in the world when you die. You have to run back to your group and then you just get the insta-second death. Man, Curry, that's gotta feel.
Yeah, that's rough. Golden Guardians on the other side have engaged Trothak. They have pulled those neutral mobs into him as well, being able to allow the hunters to engage their rapid reload. So they're not going to pull those neutral mobs in all at once. They're going to just pepper them in to be able to have the highest uptime of that rapid reload possible.
Shellitav informing me that they don't bolster because they wear hats. That's why.
Because they wear hats?
They wear hats, yes.
I see.
Yep. That's it.
Is that like an actual answer? Or is that like a meme?
No, dude.
Okay, no. Golden Guardians has pulled some trash into Trothak now. Once Trothak has reached 30% health, they're still just going to be cleaving off of him as to make sure that he doesn't get any stacks of that bolstering on death affix whenever mobs die nearby. But again, this is just peak efficiency coming out of the Golden Guardians. Currently with 0 deaths, they're having an immaculate run right here, is ironic.
I mean, yeah, so far so good for Golden Guardians here. I think the thing that's going to be really interesting to me... Ooh, that was a scary moment there. Looks like he's going to be totally fine here, though. Just healing himself up there. Was that just a Fixate that melee did? Oh, it's hit by the boss charge there, too, JP. Come on. The boss is at 5%. Let's go, dude. You got to play better than that.
Okay.
Whoa.
It was Shark Toss into Harpoon. He's trying to top himself. Has to move away from the fixated mob. Wow. Accidentally gets hit by the boss. And he's still alive. It's okay. Honestly, easy game.
Wow, that could have been really bad. It looks like they aren't changing their strat up here. If they're doing the same strategy as what they did earlier in our cup this weekend, they were using this Awakened mob skip to run up to the boss. They will spawn the boss by having Lighty attack it, and then that will pull his 4 members of the group outside of the realm, and then they'll just cleave down the 4 awakened mobs on top of the boss, and then the rest of the trash percentage they need will just come from these Ravagers. Is he just going to do this on his own? Okay, he's not going to get the 3rd mob in. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. He sits here and gets these 2 mobs while the rest of his teammates are running around. Because they're not able to mount up, they're going to take a little bit more time to be able to even make it there. So Lighty doing a great job of just getting himself in position, starting those painful motivation casts. Now, Golden Guardians have engaged Harlan Sweet. They're going to be killing all 4 awakened enemies on top of the boss. Lighty is probably going to be the breaking point in something as dangerous as this, so make sure that you continue to watch his HP.
Keep an eye, the Bloodlust wasn't available when they started this boss. They need the Bloodlust instantly on cooldown to help with this AoE here, but they haven't popped it just yet. There it is, just now coming out. It's going to help them finish off these 4 awakened mobs, but you got to keep an eye on Lighty's HP now, dropping incredibly low there, below 30%, and just now being topped up by JB. As long as their tank is alive here and they're getting kicks on Wood River Mouth here, they should be totally fine here. They have so many tools for dealing with the other mechanics here, and with Samrak Beckoner of Chaos, that's most of their issues gone. They don't have to worry about any of those fear circles here, but once Void Weaver goes down, they'll be, for the most part, pretty much stabilized, and it'll just be a large single target encounter. The question for me, though, here, Tettles, is what are they going to do for the rest of their mob count? They still are going to need about 15% mob count to finish off the dungeon, and they only have 2 Ravagers left, so you have to imagine they're going to go for some Cannonball pull right as Harlan Sweet goes down.
They're absolutely going to Cannonball Barrage this middle pack right here. Then the 2 other Ravagers should be able to finish off the remaining count that they do need from the instance. I believe that middle pack, I want to say it's 9% enemy forces count, and then the Ravager that's in the back, near where all the dogs and the oarsmen and stuff like that are, is going to be about 5%. The other Ravager, again, going to be another 5%. So that should be about the count that the Golden Guardians do need.
With another death for Curry on Deplete from Beyond side on Trothak, all eyes are on Golden Guardians right now, and the question is, are they going to be able to beat their previous time in Freehold with this new changed strat? I believe the previous time was about a little over a 13-minute time. So we're going to have to see if they're going to be able to beat that. And they're definitely on pace right now. Once Harlan Sweet drops below 30%, he takes double damage. It's all going to come down to how they set up this Cannonball Barrage pull. If they do it perfectly, I think this can be way faster than their other time.
Yep, you do see all those offensive cooldowns being activated for the Golden Guardians right here. The aspects of the wild coming out for multiple members. They are just melting Harlan Sweet here at the very end. They're positioning themselves. Okay, they're not even going to.
They don't need to actually. Barrage. Yeah, we're just dumb casters over here. I think the Ravages are on their own should be enough. Actually,
yes, they will be because as long as they get an oarsman, I suspect it should be enough. Okay, no, we're really just stupid. What,
are they really just killing this trash pack when they have 2 Ravages alive? I'm so confused right now, man. Lip incredibly low there, but able to be topped up by the way of the cream from JB. I don't get. They have 2 Ravagers alive.
They're just bolstering mobs and. Okay, look at the top of the screen. At the top of the screen, there's been a binding shot applied to that trash pack that's over there. So some of those mobs are about to get hit by the painful motivation and go down. I don't like this.
I mean, this is definitely not the best way to do this, and it's going to bring their time up to just under 13 minutes. But Golden Guardians, even though it's not the prettiest thing in the world, it's still a 0 death clean run, and they're able to go up in this series 1-0.
That's right. They're taking the win and, capitalizing on any of the mistakes that Deplete from Beyond started from basically the beginning of the dungeon, really, here, Dratnus.
Yeah, you got to be a little bit confused about what exactly happened there for Golden Guardians, but I think the most charitable explanation is that they knew that Deplete from Beyond had wiped fully, and so they knew they had enough time to take that slowly and more safely, so they decided to not try and pull stuff in with the boss because there is some inherent risk in doing it that way. So they maybe knew that they had a couple minutes to spare and they could just fight the trash pack by itself and guarantee the win.
Yeah, and at that point, it's really just make sure you do every little thing that you possibly can to not jeopardize that kind of victory. And we've seen a number of times as well, Zyro, where teams are kind of just making audibles or kind of making some weird plays just to guarantee that they make it through the finish line because they know they have a lot of breathing room.
Yeah, you can tell by our confusion at the end of that match there. Hopefully that's just like a fluke and they just messed up some count somewhere and they knew that the Ravagers wouldn't quite be enough trash percentage to finish off the dungeon. It was just really bizarre to see that happen. I don't really know what it was. But, I mean, they are able to somehow clean it up at the end, right?
I think the plan was to bombard that mid pack and get the full count from it that way.
Yes.
And then because they decided they didn't need to bombard to win the match and take they could upgrade their chances of winning from 95% to 100 by taking the safer strategy of just fighting it by itself. That is, I think, the way that makes the most sense. Of course, it's possible a mistake was made as well, but that would be the explanation for if they decided to do that, actually.
Sure. Now let's start breaking down some of those bigger mistakes that, Deplete from Beyond just completely got bogged down and their magic just kind of depleted from the beginning.
Yeah, this is really rough for them. There were a lot of things that went wrong for Deplete from Beyond. None of them were as big as this wipe here, though, that they experienced on this trash pull after the bridge. Meanwhile, Golden Guardians had some excellent bolstering management throughout the dungeon. Bolstering as an affix in here can actually slow you down quite a bit, but they did a really good job of killing everything and that second boss at right around the same time there. Did a great job of minimizing the time lost to that affix. Then they had this last boss pull that we've seen this go wrong with all kinds of different strategies here, but they did a good job of not losing damage, pulling everything together. They didn't even have their Bloodlust available because they pulled so quickly here, but they were able to use it once it came off cooldown. And then, as we mentioned, things got a little bit weird at the end when they went in and pulled all this stuff by itself-ish. And,
this is so scary. It is why I just hated it, too, because all of those mobs in there are just murdering Lighty. He can get the oil blade on him, or he can reflect it off. But if that oil blade sits on him for too long, he can die. That is a scary pull to be playing manually like that.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is just how long that it's going to end up sitting on him, and the risks of prolonging the pull, making sure they have to do it manually. We said it a number of times as well, Zyro. Sometimes it is just nicer. Sometimes it is easier if you're pulling larger.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually an Unholy DK thing, right? But it does actually have some importance with the case of Hunters, right? They can rapid reload even faster the more mobs you pull, get your Aspect of the Wild cooldown even lower. I mean, usually even chain them with that many mobs. So, yeah, it definitely makes sense as well. And I do agree with Dratnos at this point. It was definitely just a safety thing there, not pulling the boss with the Cannon Barrage on top at the end, just making sure they don't accidentally bolster the boss. Just smart play that from them if they saw how far ahead they were.
And that means we're going to be moving on into Toldagor for our next dungeon, and lots of threat, a lot of threat of wipes, a lot of threat of scuffs, left, right, and center throughout this one, Tettles.
Absolutely. Just with how large the teams go on the cannons, with the added with the added danger of explosive being an active affix here, the teams need to be able to play the first pull of the instance with raging and explosive perfectly, and then on top of that, do just an immaculate job in the cannon area. And it also makes you wonder, are we going to see any Vengeance Demon Hunters?
That's right. And we've kind of been having that back and forth debate about Demon Hunters and whether or not it is the right play to be able to pick them at this point, Drynos, because we found that Warrior obviously does tons and tons of damage, but the control that you're getting out of the Vengeance Demon Hunter should hopefully be enabling some larger pulls that they can make up the difference.
Yeah, I think we've seen Lighty be a pretty big proponent of Demon Hunter in this dungeon, so I would not be surprised to see him ending up playing that spec. I think that that's something that he excels at, and I think that in particular Golden Guardians are a team that is likely to be able to make use of it to remove pulls from the dungeon, and if you can do that, I think it is worth doing. Otherwise, yeah. I'm a fan of the Warrior for just doing the same pulls but faster.
And that also is going to be bringing us to Jez Howless, probably the most lethal boss that we have in Toldagor as well here, Zyro. On average, 0.7% lives claimed, or 0.7 lives claimed.
I think it's funny how dangerous Jez Howless appears to be in the MDI based off of the way the dungeon is pulled, but I really think it's the affixes that we tend to have in Toldagor. Like every single week, it seems like we either have Explosive or Sanguine, which are two of the worst affixes in the world to deal with in Toldagor. Those tight corridors explosives are so difficult to deal with, and on top of that, whenever you randomly have Sanguine, you get a lot of healing, but let's focus on that explosive affix. We have raging and explosive here, and if those explosive orbs get out of control, we could see some more wipes here.
You gotta love it when they spawn while you're stunned on the Jez Howless encounter as well. That is one of my favorite things.
In addition to that, in addition to that, the watery domes that go off on that fight, or the salt blast that can be cast on your tank, puts your tank in a position where they can actually die. Especially since all of the teams, in addition to that, are playing Alliance. So they don't have access to Arcane Torrent to be able to purge off those watery dome shields. They only have to have, the Spirit Beast if they're even playing Hunters in this dungeon. We've seen a bunch of different comps in here,
Yeah.
including rogues and DKs. So it's going to be. I'm interested to see what we see.
Yeah, I
That's my
mean,
point.
we were kind of speculating early on when we first started seeing some Tol Dagors as well, Drano. So they're like, oh, well, we have to see like what they're going to pull on the beach as well, because they have to watch out for any of the explosives. We saw tons of teams just going straight in with unholy DKs, and Deplete from Beyond's opted for it, while Golden Guardians isn't. So great call there for Lighty choosing the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Let's see how this all works out as Game 2 gets rolling.
Yeah, and also a big difference right away, not necessarily in the tanks too, but running a rogue on the side of Golden Guardians and a DK on the side of Deplete from Beyond. We saw this yesterday from, I believe it was Perplexed as well. They decided to not run the rogue and just had everyone with those monolite keys for opening cages instead of having a rogue. And it seemed like it really paid off for them in terms of time, because rogue just doesn't
Hold
really
on,
do
Yoda's
that much
playing
damage.
Sin.
Wait, he's
no,
playing
Yoda's
Assassination?
playing,
Oh,
he's playing
never
Assassination.
mind.
Yeah, look at this. I see him spamming Fan of Knives right here, man. Oh.
I mean, that's actually really interesting, because Outlaw, the single target scaling, especially with Corruption, doesn't really match up with those of the other classes. Better keep an eye on here.
explosive.
Lip goes down to an explosive.
Shakib goes down.
As well. They only have one battle res available, and this is a tyrannical dungeon, so even if they get a battle res up, this boss is going to take exponentially longer for them to finish, and I don't think you can reset this boss, can you?
You can. You have to take the
can?
boss incredibly far. Yes.
Wow. This is really unfortunate for them. Wow.
Oh, well, that is a shame for the Golden Guardians on the side of Deplete from Beyond. Kurisu making very quick work of that trash, showing the immense power that Death Knight does bring to this dungeon. Jay and Clicks making sure that they are on full-time explosive duty, while Kurisu promises that he will absolutely kill every single mob if you give him enough time. And staying true to that promise, the Sand Queen is now at 40% health. Deplete from Beyond solidly in the lead.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, it feels terrible to start a dungeon off that way, but we know Golden Guardians to be one of those teams that can get their head back in the game quickly, and we really need to see that mob control that Vengeance Demon Hunter brings here. But you gotta keep an eye on this. All of these mobs are now in that Raging Affix, and Light is gonna be in a lot of danger here. He doesn't really have that many cooldowns to deal with this either, so you gotta keep an eye on that. He's now got 8 stacks of that Crocodile debuff as well, so just wow, gotta really keep an eye on the tank here.
Absolutely. Deplete from Beyond starting to drop Sand Queen pretty low here, sub 15%. They're only going to have one upheaval. Those mobs are enraged. Pelting on Rentar. Kariso ends up going down. DK, he could have AMS'd that. I wonder why he didn't. Anyways.
Definitely weird.
Now they either elect to use an engineering battle res on him, or they just let him stay dead, which it looks like the Deplete from Beyond is going to just allow him to stay dead. They're going to make sure that they continue to keep that battle res for another day. Golden Guardians have engaged the Sand Queen again, starting to drop that sub 70% HP. Even though Deplete from Beyond has had a minor mishap, the Golden Guardians' mistake was way bigger.
Yeah, and it looks like Lighty's actually playing this pretty interesting build that came up on live servers recently. He's playing the Feed the Demon Hunter build instead of the more typical one. This is really interesting as well, because it's more of like a single target threat build generator, but he's going to be pretty much invincible as long as he, keeps hitting his main target. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that allows JB to kind of pump up the damage here. You can see him doing 50k single target, or, well, could be AoE damage here as well, but this is kind of interesting. I don't believe we saw the tank from Ethical running this build yesterday. He was running with a Spirit Bomb, sort of more AoE style build, yeah?
He was running Versatile, then he played Spirit Bomb with Strength of the Warden Major.
And looking at Lighty's here, he's just running, he's running Expedient, Twilight Dev, going all in on the damage. Still does have the Lash of
He's
the
playing
Void.
Vision of Perfection. Oh, he's playing the full turtle build. He's playing Gluttony.
He's playing the Gluttony Vision build. He's going all in on that.
I get. Honestly, it's because they don't have a DK, and then Rogue Double Hunter. Nobody's going to rip threat off him. They have 3 misdirection abilities, so there's no real need for him to play something like Strength of the Warden Major. So that Vision of Perfection does make sense.
Very interesting to see how that works out for them later on here. We see Deplete from Beyond, though, not having to reset that first boss, does have a pretty significant lead, already moving their way up the prison right now. And we're just going to have to see if there's any way Golden Guardians can get back into this game. We know Tol Dagor is a very short dungeon with very little room for mistakes. Of course, the major issue going to be that cannon platform, but interesting tech here from Golden Guardians here. They're not pulling the Awakened Obelisk. They're using that Fear Sigil from Lighty to make sure everyone can skip through those stingers in there. I forget what they're called, the buzzards? But they just skip past that trash mop in the sewers
drones
without having to worry about the Awakened Obelisk. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, skipping those buzzing drones there.
There you go.
Very nice. You do see Deplete from Beyond and Golden Guardians both standing here. Deplete from Beyond was gaining their buffs. You saw the last buff finally activate on the final player. Deplete from Beyond then group clicks into the obelisk. We're on the side of Golden Guardians. You see Yoda is absent currently from the forward group right here. He is off to the side, opening up as many cages as he possibly can to be able to gain those buffs for the rest of his team.
Do you think they meant to pull those neutral mobs? That looked like it was a mistake.
I have absolutely no idea. It's hard to say. I mean, I could see it either way, right? Was it intentional? Probably not.
I mean, that's just a little bit more of a time loss, though, right? I mean, that's kind of weird.
They're
For them,
17%
unfortunately.
enemy. 17% enemy forces count behind right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not looking great.
Now, I wonder if the less enemy forces is because they're going to be going for some much larger pull to the cannons later on. If that's the thing, and Vengeance Demon Hunter allows them to do that, that's going to be the thing that will let them back into the game.
Yep. Deplete from Beyond has killed the Blood of the Corruptor Obelisk. You do see Igloo here. He's channeling his Chi Burst to be able to pull Jess. Yep, it gets pulled straight through the gate. Now Rentari does taunt the boss. He's pulling it right on top of all of these C speakers here, making sure that Deplete from Beyond gets kicked on that Watery Dome cast to prevent the shield is imperative right now. Otherwise, there's going to be a large shield. Okay, fortunately enough, Deplete from Beyond, they do have one of the shields go off, but it doesn't end up sticking onto Jess. Everyone's fine here. Golden Guardians has made their way. They have engaged Jess as well. 17% enemy forces count behind, so they're pretty far behind currently.
Yeah, but like we mentioned, it doesn't really matter if they're that far behind. If they're able to just do bigger cannonballs because of the Vengeance Demon Hunter, we're going to have to see, if both teams stay relatively clean through this boss.
Sure.
What the Vengeance Demon Hunter allows them to do. I think that's really the play. I mean, we already saw it from Ethical. Even though they did end up losing their Tol Dagor due to mistakes earlier on in the dungeon, they were able to clear the bridge significantly faster to their opponent and give themselves a chance to come back in the dungeon at the very least. We'll have to see if Golden Guardians has perfected that strat using the Vengeance Demon Hunter as well.
The absolute minimum amount of count that you can have before making your way up towards that officer's quarters area in Tol Dagor and being able to get count is 30% enemy forces. That is the absolute floor. But then you would have to pull the whole entire officer's quarters and then all of the landing, like both of the landing areas where the cannons sit. So, is that realistic? Probably not in this cannon scenario where you only have 5 shots now.
Yeah, I think you're right, but it's difficult to say, right? Because with the control, if you're able to pull everything to a certain we're talking about that. Let's just pull all of the trash on the floor while Jess Hallis is doing the intermission phase, right? Let's get that out of the way. And just gonna be AoEing this down. This is where their extra percentage is coming from.
Yoda was also opening up a couple of cages while Lighty was there grouping mobs to be able to get a really efficient way of being able to deal with all of that. Jess House on the opposite side of the screen from Deplete from Beyond is dropping incredibly low, sub 20% health. Golden Guardians are starting to claw their way back though.
Oh yeah, and they're above that minimum count needed like you were mentioning earlier, so they might just be gearing up to do some massive officer's quarters pull into the cannon here, and if they're able to pull it off with how close they actually are behind now, it's going to be pretty impressive. And I think really the thing that let them back into this game was the fact that Deplete from Beyond opted to go for a large trash pull on that second story with all the buffs, and that's allowed Golden Guardians to catch up a lot here. Only 20% behind on Jess Hallis as Deplete from Beyond deals with that boss.
So now you have Deplete from Beyond, group using Lightfoot Potions. There comes the Ring of Peace. Everybody's going to stack up in this corner, use their Shadow Meld ability to be able to drop combat. Now everybody is going into the Samrek Beckoner of Chaos Obelisk. Of course, very hard to play Samrek Beckoner of Chaos with Overseer Korgus. Igloo doing the dirty work, opening up that gate for everybody to be able to walk through towards the cannon area. Golden Guardians not to be outdone, pops their Lightfoot Potions and runs all the way through as well, making their way towards this obelisk. Yoda, with the shorter cast time on his lockpicking, he's going to open this gate for the rest of his group. Now everybody enters their Samrek Beckoner of Chaos obelisk.
And once Samurek goes down, we're going to see just what it is Golden Guardians has up their sleeve here. It's all going to come down to these cannon pulls, because a little bit of inefficiency, leaving one mob or two mobs alive without any cannon shots left, could be the difference here that lets Golden Guardians back into the game. Let's keep an eye on that as well. And one thing, not that it should be a major issue for these teams as well, the cannons are going to be way more safe for Golden Guardians because they do have a rogue with Tricks of the Trade that can be used for the cannon shots, whereas Deplete from Beyond doesn't have that ability. Once one cannon shot goes out from Deplete from Beyond, they're going to instantly have aggro on every single one of these mobs, so let's see how this goes for them here.
Well, they can use Misdirection, but Misdirection is infinitely worse than Tricks of the Trade with how the cannon functionality ends up working. But GG playing the most safe strategy. You see Lighty here on that Vengeance Demon Hunter running through, grabbing every single mob that is in the area, grouping them all up. Deplete from Beyond on the other side of your screen, looking like they're having a couple of issues with mobs getting spread out from the cannons.
This is what we were talking about. They're having a lot of issues here dealing with these mobs, and they even got lucky there. Dr. J got hit by one of those mobs down to 8% while he was in the cannon and just barely was able to stay alive. And they still have to deal with the rest of these mobs on their own out here, whereas Golden Guardians is gearing up for a similar large-style pull of their own. The Sigil of Silence coming out from Lighty there, making sure nothing can cast. The Leg Sweep coming out from AbG to stack everything up, and I imagine we'll see the Sigil of Chains to stack it all up now. Look at this execution. The binding shot comes out. This is beautiful.
They don't even need Misery. They don't even need Sigil of Misery. Okay, the Sigil of Misery comes in incredibly late. Lip is dropping low, trying to help kill all those explosives so Yoda doesn't even have to use his Cloak of Shadows there.
They have pulled ahead in the trash percentage now, and they finished it only 5 to 10 seconds after Deplete from Beyond. They are crushing this dungeon right now and absolutely giving themselves a chance back in. And because Deplete from Beyond has to deal with the second cannon, they're now going to be behind. Golden Guardians is just moving onwards.
Look at this. Look at this. They're actually skipping most of this trash. Some of it's getting pulled, but I think they're going to pull it into Night Captain Valeri. They're pulling a 3-pack into Valeri, foregoing even doing a second cannon pull because they know they don't even have any of their utility spells available, so there's no point in doing it. They're going to have enough count just from this 3-pack on top of Valeri.
Dr. J goes down. Dr. J is their cannon shooter. They need to get clicks in there and start shooting now. With those explosive arcs, they're going to kill him too. Oh my gosh, this is a worst case scenario for Deplete from Beyond. They have to finish it off. They still have an officer and 2 Marines alive. This is going horribly from them, and now Clicks goes down as well. And Rentari and Igloo might be able to kite this pull out, but there's nobody left to shoot the cannon for them. Whereas Golden Guardians, they're already halfway through Night Captain Valeri with these trash mobs going down purely efficiently for the hunter damage here.
At the snap of a finger, Golden Guardians go from being a minute to a minute and a half behind to instantly being in the lead. And that is how volatile these dungeons are and how much poise and precision practice is all involved in making sure that everything is done just perfectly. This is like a dance. In watching Golden Guardians, even though they had a mishap on the Sand Queen at the very beginning, the rest of their run has been perfect, and they've been positioning themselves to be able to come back because of it, and now they are so far in the lead.
And with the trash essentially dead, minus that one officer there's nothing that can wipe them the Night Captain Valeri. And once Valeri goes down, they do have that final checkpoint available before the 4th boss, so even if this final cannon pull does go awry for them, they should be able to easily release and fix it up quickly. And of course, this cannon pull is way smaller than the other ones, and since they were able to do that one perfectly, I don't think they're going to mess this one up. But we've spoken too soon before, so we got to keep an eye on Golden Guardians here. With only 1 trash pull left in the dungeon before the final boss, let's see how they can pull it off.
Dude, I loved the 3-target on top of Night Captain Valeri to be able to gain the rapid reload, and then you just have one of the mobs trapped off to the side because you know you get 12% enemy forces count, so you don't need it anyways. Just leave it trapped there. Now everybody's going to meld off that final mob or feign death it off to be able to drop combat with it. Lightfoot's ahead to be able to group up all these mobs, dealing with the last 12% that's going to come from the cannon. Oh my goodness, what a run.
Wow, I mean, these guys have been playing great. Having the wherewithal to keep your mental stability in check, making sure you're clean, you're not focused on making mistakes. I mean, the fact that they had to reset the first boss and are able to come back and play this dungeon this cleanly is incredibly impressive. We keep comparing this team to Wunderbar in terms of how well they play, how prepared they are in their matches. They're really showing it off right here. And look at this, 2 awakened mobs with the last boss. No problem for that. Feed the Demon Hunter. He'll be healing himself like crazy. And also, you know what? Activating the rapid reload for the hunters too as well. Just nice, efficient damage for them here. Let's see if they're able to pull it off.
They're absolutely not out of the woods yet because Malthier plus Urdroth is pretty dangerous. Urgroth with that Dark Fury cast on a fight like Overseer Corgus, which is pretty movement restrictive, can be dangerous. Lip doing a great job of dodging out of the way of the cannon and the crossfire ignition simultaneously. They really just need to make sure that they're going to be downing Urgroth as quickly as possible. The Deadeye shot, unfortunately, not there. He does end up getting the debuff. Overseer Corgus, once he is at 55%, this is not very challenging relative to what we have seen across the whole entire rest of this run. Deplete from Beyond are in position to be able to capitalize on Golden Guardian's mistake, but it seems like a little bit too little too late.
Yeah, I mean, they would need somebody to just walk into a cannon blast at this point to have any chance of coming back to this dungeon. And Golden Guardians are looking to set up what is going to be the third rematch in a row in all of our past MDI finals. MDI Spring Finals in Sydney last year, it was back then Method NA versus Method EU. Same thing at BlizzCon, those same two teams in the finals. They are 1-1 in grand finals. And it's going to be a tiebreaker here, it looks like, in our grand finals of this year. It's going to be Golden Guardians versus Wunderbar as long as they're able to clean up these last 20% of Overseer Corvus.
Absolutely. You see the turtle coming out of Lip there, being able to mitigate as much of the explosive burst damage as possible. Deplete from Beyond has engaged Overseer Corgus. Overseer Corgus on the side of Golden Guardians is going to be going down here, I don't know, in the next 5 seconds. So
last
big
couple
GGs.
percentage. Golden Guardians in the big GG, taking the victory over Deplete from Beyond in a swift 2-0. And again, dancing with their European counterparts. Wunderbar is going to be meeting up with them in the grand finals. What a great series there by Golden Guardians to just say, we need to be back in that grand final. We're ready to take them on.
Yeah, Deplete from Beyond as well. They'll be leaving our tournament now, but they have had an incredible weekend. They have put forward some great times, some great maps. They knocked out Perplex last round. Let's give them a round of applause here as they depart our tournament, but very well played.
GG's to Deplete from Beyond, GG's to GG.
That's right, and Deplete from Beyond, while they have had an absolutely magical weekend, Zyro, it just seemed like throughout this series, their magic just kind of kept running out. There was just little things here and there, just they could not overcome.
Yeah, we briefly mentioned it as a joke during that Freehold series, but it looks like the wizard powers from Dr. J have finally run out. But they still had an incredible run through this lower bracket here, really showing that they're a team that can compete with the top teams. Finally kind of squashing that I don't know, they were able to take out one of the top two teams in the European region, which is something they couldn't do throughout all of our cups, and that's going to be a good look for them going forward into future MDIs. These guys have definitely shown that they're here to play.
Yeah, and this has been the most fascinating thing about today as well, Tettles, that we had 4 teams with so much history throughout the tournament in general, and you're just looking to see who's going to be able to make it out, and I guess we can't say that we're too surprised because Golden Guardians, Wunderbar have been absolute champs.
Oh, absolutely. Golden Guardians at the very beginning of this Toldegor made a mistake that Dranos would describe as medium bad. Having to reset the Sand Queen after 2 deaths is a tragedy in its own right. They didn't have a full wipe, but man, that's not ideal. Deplete from Beyond's mistakes were just medium worse.
All right, let's see, Dranos. You see that's medium bad? I think that's like super bad.
It wasn't too bad. I would say it's like medium. It's took a little while
we have
longer.
a whole
But
scale.
yeah, it wasn't quite well done bad.
All right. Well, was there anything else that was super well done bad? Charred bad.
Let's take a look actually at that very first incident there where we had Lip and Shakib going down. That looked like a thing from Beyond connecting with Shakib and removing him from the video game. That forced them to reset. But then all of this was made up in the cannon section, and this was a huge difference here between these two teams. Deplete from Beyond with this first cannon section, it was looking okay, but actually some of their shots went a little bit wide of the mob, so they ended up using a lot of their cannon shots and missing most of the enemies. Meanwhile, 39% was what Golden Guardians were at the start of this cannon section, and they pulled so much with this first cannon that they didn't even need the second cannon. In the wise words of Lighty, why use many cannon when one cannon do trick? And that got them a full, massive chunk of percentage there. And then they were able to just skip the second cannon and go right into the boss. And this was where their strategy was just so much faster. Even if Deplete from Beyond hadn't had any further unfortunate things happen, which they did, that was where the game was won.
Sloot is so pleased with Dratnos now after that bad joke.
He accepted the challenge, he accepted the call to action, and now Golden Guardians is going to be playing in the grand finals. And not only that, Tettles, but Nagura will be around to cast a Golden Guardians game.
Is that
So
allowed?
for those who don't know, there's a conspiracy that's being spread around that states that Nagura was no longer available to cast Golden Guardians games, and we were talking about it before the show, and she was like, "Man, if they lose, I won't be able to cast them at all. They'll continue to propagate this conspiracy. But fear not, we have broken the curse, and Nagura is allowed to cast in the finals."
And fear not, Tettles is the only one who's able to propagate conspiracies about cereal now. About
Absolutely.
breakfast in general. Well, great GGs to Golden Guardians. We will be seeing them in the grand finals in our final round of the day. And both Wunderbar and Golden Guardians will be competing for that $150,000 grand prize through our 5-game best of series right now. So tons of dungeons that we're going through. And now we just kind of got to think about what's going to be banned from these teams, as a lot of the dungeons that we usually see banned are tossed out early in this one, so we'll see what they're going to be. We'll take a quick break before we get into it. Don't go anywhere. The grand finals coming up right after this. Welcome back, as it's now time for the grand finals to see who will be taking home that $150,000 grand prize and be the final champions of BFA. Hello everyone, I'm Jack, and for our grand finals I'm joined by Dratnos, Zyronic, and Nagura, as well as Wunderbar and the Golden Guardians, who have constantly been matching off against each other. This rivalry, this friendship between a lot of these teams, Nagura, has just been lasting such an incredibly long time over the course of the expansion.
Yeah, I mean, this is a matchup we've seen over and over again. And even though it was almost to be expected to see those two teams in the finals, it really wasn't as clear-cut throughout this weekend as we maybe would have thought, right? There were so many close series, and even the game earlier where Wunderbar won versus Golden Guardians, it was just 2 seconds between those two teams in some of those games. So I think this is going to be an incredible series between those two teams.
That's right, and it will be a best-of-5 series, so each team will still be able to have one map ban, but there's going to be a lot on the line that'll also be testing the flexibility of a lot of both of these teams as well. Drano says they have a lot of games to be playing, especially, for Golden Guardians having to go back-to-back right now.
Yeah, a 7-map series as well. That really tests the depth of these teams and their ability to, you can't just ban out as high a percentage of this map pool, right? 2 bans against 7, a lot less than 2 against 5. So they are going to be in some environments that they are less comfortable with or that they're more worried about their opponents in, and we'll have to see how that turns out.
Yep, and it's going to be, very interesting to see as well. We have the usual maps that come up as well, Zyro, like Junkyard, which I think we're kind of expecting to receive the ban, but Siege, Waycrest, Workshop, KR, Motherlode, Freehold, we have a whole breadth of dungeons these teams have to be kind of agonizing over as to which one the teams are going to ban.
Yeah, and I think at this point, with the wide range of strengths that these two teams have, I don't think it really matters what they ban. Yeah. They're just going to ban what they don't feel like they have a good strat on, and for them, their bad strat seems to be as good as other teams' best strat, so it's kind of crazy. I want to present an interesting fact to you, though. Okay. In our previous 2 finals, in Spring Finals and BlizzCon Finals, when these two teams played against each other for the Grand Finals match, the team that came from the lower bracket won, and they also won in 3-0. Ooh. Are we going to see that trend continue here?
Well, we didn't see Nagura cast any Golden Guardians games, and that pattern was indeed broken. So while we're kind of chewing on that idea, we also have some great things to kind of offer a little bit of a distraction, a little bit of a relaxation as these teams get ready. We've had our transmog competition, where viewers all over the world have been sending in their favorite transmogs for us to be able to judge very harshly, Dratnos.
Judge very harshly. I'm not going to do that. It's a very nice transmog, yeah.
I like that Holy Priest artifact staff as well. Good Legion throwback. I think it's got the shoulders from Dazaralor as well.
Yeah, look at all these skulls. Good. That's 1 skull on the helmet, 3 on each shoulder. That's 7 total skulls. That's a lot of skulls, Jack.
Don't ask how I know this, but is that the Trial of Valor chest armor?
I think so. Actually, I think it's a full.
I'm scared that I know that. I shouldn't know that. I don't do transmog.
I love the Trial of Valor ones. It was just like, you complete the dungeon, your reward is you get the entire set. You don't have to spend weeks working on it. It's just like, here you go. Here's a whole box full of everything that you need. So, girl, how do you feel
about this transmog is
that it's gone?
I think I play a female troll myself, and I think I have such a hard time finding something that looks good in a female troll.
It's true.
And this actually looks good, so maybe I have to steal it.
Yeah. We got a Volpira coming up next with, I think it's the hammer from Mechagon. One of the Mechagon hammers, engineering goggles, possibly the backpack as well.
Gotta love the NG Goggies. They're always a good mog to have on, if you do mog.
I've been having the NG Goggies just wearing them for M+ for a very long time. When you get that, when you get the cauterizer that kicks in and removes the bleed debuff in King's Rest, ooh, pays for itself. Pays for itself at that point.
This is my favorite so far.
I guess there's survival as well. Okay, we got a full set. See, we already saw the shoulders from Dazaralor, but now we get the full priest set coming in, or the full cloth set.
The cloth, yeah.
Yeah, I guess this is mage? Question mark.
Looks like there's some frosty spell being cast here. So if I had to guess, it's probably a frosty mage.
I really like the screen, like the environment and how everything just really fits to the screenshot, right? And then you have this, this background as well.
Yeah, it's a well-framed
really
shot. You like to see that. That's up in Nazmir, right, where that sun is like that. Up in Bonsondi's a little area.
Ooh, this is good. Is this a?
It looks like out of a cinematic.
I was gonna say, is this like a set of gear or is this all custom? I like that little like dagger in the belt as well.
It looks custom.
Yeah, some of the belt mogs
it also looks like
so good.
That's one of the things I love from like Holy Paladins back in Legion, where they had like the book that was like attached to their belt while they had a big two-hander. That was great.
Do you know our players on the tournament realm have access to like whatever transmog they want, even some items that like the corrupted Ashbringer and stuff that really few people have on the live servers?
I think Fired Up was
those as well. Yeah,
I think Fired Up was running around with. I shouldn't say it because the chat will be spammed with it. He was running with Thunder Fury for
Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker.
Did somebody say Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker?
Did somebody say Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker? And now we get to see our final winner, our champion of the Transmog competition.
I hope it's Pop Knock.
Hey! No, dude! He's not even there to respond. Settles isn't even there to respond.
That's where he is right now. Yeah, every time the WoW esports Twitter tweets out about a screenshot competition, I have a folder of Tettles pictures that I open up and I just submit one of them kind of at random. This is the one I went with for this one though, yeah.
What led you to
on the
picking...
bench?
That was one of you last time, yeah. That one was, I didn't want to go back to back on the bench Tettles pick.
So as the winner of, the screenshot competition, what led you to pick this specific one? You had a whole folder, a whole album of them.
Sometimes it's difficult just being such a creative genius. I feel more like a conduit, really, and I let the art flow through me.
That is certainly some amazing art as well. So thank you, Tettles, for being a great test subject for Dratnos to be able to work with and brightening up our day a slight smidge as we're getting ready for our grand finals. And there it is, Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. I think Lighty was running with that as well. Do we know what Now was using?
I don't know, but I can tell you that Max from Complexity Limit was using like a priest staff or something.
He was using I thought he had like a tennis racket or something along those lines at some point.
One of his, I think the Mog on his Coltiran human was he used a torch for his weapon and just a bucket helmet, and then nothing else. It was great.
Transmogs have gone too far this time. Let's take a look at our bracket as we get ready for our global finals and how we got here. Wunderbar being undefeated throughout the tournament, just sending their way directly to the grand finals, while we've seen Golden Guardians winning out. And while they did drop down into the lower bracket, they continued to push to get back to that grand finals and get their rematch. And I'm telling you, Nagar, it's just a whole dose of nostalgia from back when NA and EU were the same region as well. And this was basically every single weekend.
Yeah, I think it was every single weekend that they met in the upper bracket, in the upper final, and then they met again in the grand final. And most of the time, we saw Method EU, which is now known as Wunderbar, win. But we also saw Method NA, now known as Golden Guardians, win in that spring final last year. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And I really hope we're just going to see some close matches. I really hope we're going to see a 5-game series, because this one is going to be a best of 5 instead of a best of 3 like all the other games.
That's right. All right, taking a look at our maps. Yes, Workshop didn't get banned. If you were here earlier, you saw that 1-2 second difference in between these two teams. So we get a great rematch on that one, while Golden Guardians has banned Borealis and Wunderbar has banned Junkyard. So Mudload and Freehold are going to be the last two dungeons that could be played in this, but I am so excited, Dranos, for what Workshop could mean for the entirety of the competition.
Yeah, I think you gotta like Wunderbar as the favorites in Workshop, because more went wrong for them in the earlier matchup between these two teams on that map, and they were still able to win it. So I think their strategy is maybe a little faster.
All right, let's see, as both teams got to capitalize on, not making the same mistakes they had earlier. Let's get it going. Game number 1 in our grand finals right here in Workshop.
Alright, so we're already starting here with the trash group, and already different strats coming in. Wunderbar dealing with the trash, not actually utilizing the hammers. Now, these mobs actually dropping bombs to the floor that detonate and do damage the mobs as well. It's not just the hammers that help you out, but also the bombs that you drop on the floor. And that's why Wunderbar had a very interesting strategy. They were gathering the trash up, and then they all gathered on top of the trash to make sure that the bombs are spawning on top. And then now we're slowly hiding the trash over the bombs to get the friendly fire. And it looked like it paid off for them because they managed to clear the trash a little bit faster, and therefore the boss spawned faster as well.
And what's crazy to me is this actually happened to them in their previous matchup in Workshop as well, where they were only a second or 2 seconds apart at the end. They had that same thing happen. Golden Guardians didn't quite deal with the bombs as fast as Wunderbar did, but they were still able to complete this boss faster purely because of the way they did the hammers, right? Making sure they get no mercy charge on the fourth hammer rather than the third so they can put more damage into Platinum Pummeler here. Let's see if Wunderbar just made a mistake with their strategy last time and they're able to pull that off here, because that was like a 30-second time loss for them this time.
It was definitely a bit different last time. We do see that No Mercy is going to get finished off with that hammer here. Oh, close to actually 6% left for Wunderbar, as Golden Guardians are just carrying around No Mercy here from hammer to hammer. Zalia going down, actually. They are getting a battle rest, but I'm okay. So Zalia is actually accepting the battle rest, which is really just a time thing because there's no way they need the healing anymore. It's only the Platinum Pummeler alive, there's no more damage to go away. But because the hammers do more damage, the more people trigger it, they decided to actually get the rest off on Sally just for a pure time save of how close this game was last time.
And it looks like Golden Guardians wasn't as successful in dealing with that last hammer smash as they were last time, so even though they're able to get the same time kill, on their kill looks like Wunderbar is killing the boss a solid 25 seconds faster than they did last time. Of course, with the main caveat being that Zalia died, they don't have that battle res available for the next 8.5 minutes in this dungeon. We'll have to see if that's going to be something that causes problem for them later on, because if they need to battle res somebody on this next boss, that could bite them horribly.
Yeah, definitely. They can't make any more mistakes from here on out. You will see the skip come in by both of those teams. The tanks just running through, making sure they get aggro, and then they are shadow melting off the aggro before they engage Kujo. Of course, it is bolstering, so this trash that they just skipped is very inefficient to play because the living waste have much less HP than the other mobs, and therefore it's just something you do not really want to deal with, at least not with the living waste.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we're probably going to see similar strategies from what we've seen as well once they just deal with those few ads afterwards. It's really going to come down to, it looks like those single target damage here. We talked about this a lot last time in the workshop here. We saw the massive amount of single target damage coming out of Zalia on the last boss here. It was definitely a question mark as to whether or not the corruption was the main issue, but really we know corruption, even when you're playing perfectly, doesn't really amount to much of a difference. You still have the same corruption budget with all of your corruption. It might come out to maybe 3 or 4k single target DPS if you're playing perfectly. So really it must have just been that JB felt like he had to keep his team alive, whereas Zalia was comfortable enough with his teammates keeping themselves alive and was able to pump out more damage global cooldowns than JB was. They're really going to have to try to step that up here because they know even if they have better execution in the dungeon, the greater single target damage from Wunderbar is always going to be something just looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, and a little bit of a mistake here for Golden Guardians as Lydie didn't position the boss onto the corner for JB to still attack. Of course, the Hunters were still able to attack because there is a position where you can stand and you do not get hit by the AoE, but you can still attack the boss. But it wasn't close enough for JB to attack the boss because, of course, 4 melees needs to be a little bit closer. That's why JB actually dropped his hand and DPS just because of this fact that the boss wasn't close enough. And these things really matter. That's why Wunderbar actually finished off this boss quite a bit faster compared to Golden Guardians, even though Golden Guardians did save that Bloodlust for Kujo, while Wunderbar did use it on the first boss.
Yeah, I mean, that's 2 million extra damage dealt by your healer on the boss, and you can see the difference here. It's going to be about a 10-second differential here in this boss timer, which is a massive deal when we saw them only winning by 2 seconds earlier on. We're going to have to see more damage and better execution coming from Golden Guardians to work their way back into this matchup, because I don't think Wunderbar is a team that will make the same mistake twice in a row.
Yeah, definitely not. We see them already fighting this gauntlet here. Can utilize the spell reflect from the warrior pretty well here as well, getting those casts through. It is bolstering, so you definitely still want to even out the damage. Don't want to just spell reflect the casters and let the guards go through. That's why the Hunters are probably focusing the guards, while the Sparrow Reflect is being used by now to even out the damage.
Yeah, and I'm just taking a look at their corruption choices here. They're running they're both healers are running the exact same thing as last dungeon here, just sticking to their guns. The expedient / gushing wounds hybrid coming out from Zalia, and the full versatility build coming out from JB, just playing it super safe without too much of a damage loss. And yeah, it's really just going to come down to execution here. You can see that Wunderbar is just that 15 or so seconds ahead in terms of execution. They're on the same trash pull right now, but they still have half of the health bar to deal with on the side of Golden Guardians.
Yeah, and I mean, you gotta look at the damage, really. I mean, even though, of course, the healers and the tanks do a lot less damage than the hunters most of the time, but sometimes they can really just burst a lot, and it really makes the difference when the games are so close between those two. You can see Zalia doing up to 70k single target DPS to this mob here, and 100k early in the trash before. And also JB just pumping 80k single target DPS onto this single mob. That's just an insane amount of damage coming out of those healers.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, once again, just holding that slight 15-second lead, it's really hard to mention that. I mean, these teams are just so good. You don't see any real mistakes coming out of them. It almost always just comes down to execution-based strategies. The DPS, yeah, that's a minor thing that could make up for a difference over the entire dungeon. But any minor mistake, you know, maybe bad bolstering management in the last pack or any of these big packs actually, or just a death somewhere could spell the difference with how close these teams are.
Yeah, definitely. You see Wunderbar and Golden Guardians dealing with this Void Weaver here, just because it's very efficient to use the Obelisk here to skip to the next boss, because this Gauntlet is something that can cost you a lot of time if you have to wait in the vents and you can't walk through those spots. That's why you've seen almost every team deal with this Void Weaver so far and play the last 3 obelisks or awakened mobs with the last boss. And Wunderbar now already engaging that boss while Golden Guardians are slightly behind, but it's not as big of a difference. And you also got to consider the 5 seconds in favor of Golden Guardians.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to add up here. We were just mentioning it. That's not something you want to have happen. Fortunately for them, it didn't happen in boss combat, so they didn't have to worry about resetting the boss without having a battle res available, because that right there would be the opening that Golden Guardians needs to just guarantee themselves this map. But for what it's worth right now, they're able to catch up in single target damage here and bring the bosses to roughly the same percentage here. I mean, these guys are neck and neck.
Yeah, this is incredibly close. I mean, it is a tyrannical environment, so percentage is quite a bit, but it's still so incredibly close. With the 5 seconds, I mean, anything could happen in this dungeon. The percentage, of course, is completely even. Both of them are on 41%. They actually have the exact same pulls in the dungeon, as we've seen last time that they played against each other. And we do know as well that they're going to pull some trash on top of these bosses at the very end, which can be very dangerous because it is bolstering. And this boss by itself already has so many mechanics that you need to dodge, with those cogwheels going around and the fire that needs to be dodged everywhere. And on top of that, you also have to handle the trash at the same time.
It's a really finicky thing too as well, because you want to make sure you do it in between those flame jets from the center here, so you don't have to worry about kiting the trash around the room. But one of the things you can do if you're not too worried about it is you can stand in these damage reduction aura circles that come from the Tinkerers, but it looks like they're just not letting them go through. Usually okay, it's on the stairs right there, which is interesting because you can just Z-axis the flame vents on the stairs there as well. So there's another shield generator down that people can use, but you just cleave it down, actually. I don't think you can cleave those down. I'm pretty sure you have to single target those down, which is really weird that it died. But it doesn't even matter. The boss is already dead. The flame jets aren't going to be a major issue for them as they just deal with the rest of the trash here. Fantastic cleave execution from Wunderbar there, whereas Golden Guardians, not quite the same on their end. Wunderbar had the trash essentially dead by the time the boss went down, but you can see Golden Guardians here, multiple trash mobs still alive, some of them as high as 40% HP, which can be an issue for bolstering here, so it's going to take a little bit more time for them to clean it up.
Yeah, definitely a little bit less efficient by Golden Guardians here, costing them a little bit more time compared to Wunderbar. Definitely matters as they're now pulling those spider tanks. There's no way to skip those spider tanks. I mean, theoretically, you could skip one of them, but the one that stands on top of the platform needs to be killed to spawn the robot that gets you to the last platform. There we go. That's why they also focus that robot or the spider tank. As you can see, the Golden Guardians have that one marked with a triangle marker to be sure they finish that one down first. to get that robot faster because it has a little bit of a RP time before it spawns and before it's clickable. There we go. Now it spawns for Golden Guardians too. But yeah, still a little bit of a difference in favor of Wunderbar here.
Yeah, and I don't see this being a team that would give up that lead either, especially now that they have that battle res back and available for them as well, should they have any issues later at this point in the dungeon. This is a team that when they're playing well, it seems like they have a vice grip on the throats of the other team. It's like, you know what? We're not going to make any mistakes. You guys have to play perfectly to have any chance of beating us. And Golden Guardians, even though they haven't had any deaths, they've just made small mistakes. Hammer management on the first boss, slight bolstering mismanagement on that third boss. That's enough of a mistake against Wunderbar to give them the edge to win. It's so crazy just how on a knife's edge this is balanced between these two teams. I don't really know what it's going to take for one team to look significantly better than the other here.
Yeah, and they know how close this matchup is too between those two teams. I mean, Wunderbar committing the battle res when only the Pummeler was alive there on the first boss is definitely also just something that shows they know how close this matchup is, and they know that every single second counts, and that's why they committed it. Because I feel like any other matchup, they would have just kept the battle res. Yes, you can finish off that boss without the healer. It's gonna take a couple more seconds, but at least you have the safety of having this battle rest. But not in this, and they actually mismanaged the bolstering here on Wunderbar's side. As you can see, those bots are really high HP still. Even stopping really low with that debuff on him that was bolstered by the mob and therefore did more damage.
Yep, but he did get it removed at the last second there, so they didn't have to worry about the damage coming out from it. And they are going to be engaging aerial unit R21Z, a King Mechagon bot here, significantly before Golden Guardians, who are still dealing with this bolstering pack. And the bolstering kills Shakib here. That's going to be that death on the board for them. So there's no longer a 5-second differential here, and they're going to have to res him up before getting to this boss. That's going to be more of a time loss for them, and they're going to end up engaging this boss a solid 20 or 25 seconds behind Wunderbar here. There has to be some major issue during this boss from Wunderbar to give Golden Guardians a chance back in, because we know that Zaylia just seems to be more efficient at pumping out that damage than JB is.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we saw Wunderbar pulling the boss after Golden Guardians, and they still managed to beat them on boss timer just because they were playing this boss more efficiently. So it's not looking good for Golden Guardians. If Wunderbar does the same thing as last time, then it should be going in their favor unless they make some sort of mistake. They still have their Awakened mobs up, so this is still a very difficult thing to chew through. They did use their Bloodlust on the beginning of that boss, while Golden Guardians, because they used their Bloodlust later on Cujo instead of the first boss, they did not have it ready on the start of this pool, and therefore they are committing their Bloodlust in the second phase. So they definitely are going to have the second phase done faster for them. But it's a huge difference if you look at the boss HP right now. Wunderbar is just so much faster because they pulled the boss so much earlier.
And we know that the Bloodlust shouldn't be a major issue here for Wunderbar, because before, when they pulled the final boss at the exact same time, Golden Guardians had the Bloodlust available for the actual King Mechagon portion of the fight, and they still couldn't kill the boss as fast as Wunderbar here. So with 50% left on Aerial Unit and Awakened Mob still alive, you have to imagine that this is just a slam dunk win here for them.
Yeah, they are now in phase 2, while Golden Guardians are still fighting those Awakened mobs as well. And they really are not having any easy time. As you can see, the Awakened mobs are still up, and you definitely need to finish off the Awakened mobs before you finish the aerial unit. There's no way for you to speed this up. On some other boss fights, sometimes we see the teams just try this Hail Mary thing where they focus the boss instead of their Awakened mobs to speed up the kill in case they know they're behind. But that doesn't work here, because if you finish off the aerial unit, you will get stunned. And if you still have the Awakened mobs up, they'll just kill you while you can't do anything about it. So they have to finish off the Awakened mobs first. And Wunderbar now, I mean, they're already on 60%, and Golden Guardians not even now in phase 1. This is going to go to Wunderbar unless they make some sort of huge mistake here, which I very highly doubt, just because this fight, it is tyrannical. But oh my god, the two things from beyond almost finishing off Maris here as he has to use his acceleration to stay alive.
Excuse me, sorry. That was a scary moment there from Mirez, though. And he doesn't have the aspect of the turtle available either for him, so this could be a horrible moment for him here.
So, I mean, he was trying to run away from those things from beyond, and he was in this corner and couldn't go anywhere. That was incredibly scary, but did manage to stay alive. And we see some of those Giga Blasts going through on Gingy, and they still have some defensives available. We also see Zalia, of course, still having a lot of mana left, so it should be fine. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
also see just Sally is still doing crucial KPS while keeping the whole group alive. And there we go, Amagabase going down. It's going to be the first game in this grand final going to Wunderbar, but they still
Yeah.
need to win 2 more, so nothing's over.